Evening and welcome to the March 9th meeting of the Westborough Planning Board. As with all meetings these days, I have to read this governor's order into the record. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 18, and the Governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitation on the number of people that may gather in one place. This meeting of the Westborough Planning Board will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information and the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and/or parties with a right and/or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the Town of Westborough's website at town.westborough.ma.us. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to watch the meeting may do so in the following manner. Members of the public wishing to participate from their remote location are encouraged to email their questions to planning@town.westborough.ma.us. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. The meeting can be viewed on Verizon Channel 24 and Charter Channel 191 or live streamed online at westboroughtv.org. In the event that we are unable to do so, despite best efforts, we will post on the Town of Westborough's website an audio or video recording transcript or other comprehensive record of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. So we have a pretty full agenda tonight. Just to announce the 228 Ruggles Street, we're going to have to extend that again due to illness. So we'll push that to the end of the agenda. I think we'll start with the building lot releases at Silver Hollow Estates. I was hoping Jim would be on by now, but I think we can cover this without him. Silver Hollow has requested additional lot releases. This is the project on Mount Pleasant Street. I'm not sure who's here for the applicant. Is Ken Chase on?
I believe it's.
I don't believe so.
I believe it's Stephen Durrett.
Oh, Steve.
Yes, it is.
Okay, Steve, you want to explain this to the board and we'll have a discussion?
Okay, if you recall, towards the end of last year, we asked for lot release of the first 6 lots, which were lots that were sewered on the town system. The balance of the lots, which are basically from the peak of the property, the sewage flows downhill, down to the bottom of Barred Owl, where we have a group septic system installed. It is now completed. The only thing that remains to be done relative to that system is to do a clear water test to prove to the Board of Health that that system works. So 20 of the 26 lots in the subdivision drain to the group septic system, and early on in discussions with the engineer, the town building inspector, and others, was that we wouldn't and couldn't apply for lot releases until that system was installed. So it has electricity, it has telephone service for the alarm system, and it also has gas service to run the gas-driven standby generator for that system. So at that point, with the acknowledgement of the building inspector and the Board of Health, that we have requested lot release for the balance of the subdivision, so that's 20 lots in this request, but we will only be building an additional 9 lots in the near term, which would bring us up to 15 lot releases. And thereafter, we would owe the town the impact fee of $170,000. So that's the scenario at this point, is that we're asking that the remainder of the subdivision for building be released. with the knowledge that if we get to the 16th lot request for release, that we would be paying the town's impact fee of $170,000.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
I don't see Fred on the call, but I do see Lisa. Lisa, is there any comments from engineering on this?
No, we have no objections to the lot releases. The only thing I would ask is, can we put something in there to trigger that the last remaining lots can't be released if Mount Pleasant is an overlay paved by then?
Steve, do you have any comments on that?
Well, I guess I would, I don't have any problem with it being the 16th lot or farther. And I say that only because, Lisa, as you know, John Fryer is ready to finish the pavement in Mount Pleasant as soon as the weather gets fine. As a matter of fact, we were prepared to do it last fall, but at your request, we delayed until this spring.
Yeah,
So
that's
hopefully
fine. No objection at all. Just as long as it's done before the last lot is built on, we're fine with that.
Okay, that's fine. We accept that.
Jim, comments?
I have a comment. Jim Robbins has a comment.
Right.
Hi, Jim.
Go ahead.
Hi, guys. Sorry about my internet connection. I apologize. Thank you for allowing me to participate by phone, however. So we have to release the lots according to the conditions of approval in the decision. And I believe that the conditions of approval say that when you get to the 15th lot, you will pay the fee to the town. I think it's 125,000 some odd dollars.
It's the 16th, Jim.
Okay, the 16th, but you're asking for 20 lots. And it's not triggered by building permit, it's triggered by
numbers on this request, which is an additional 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, it's 9 lots. Brings us up to the 15th.
Okay, so I understand. I heard you say the remainder of the lot.
I misspoke. But the bond amount that is in the hands of the town is for the entire subdivision.
Understood. I'm only referring to the lot that would trigger the payment to the town.
Yes. Which is not, it would be the one after what you have here.
Okay, thank you.
At this point, Steve and Jim, we're being requested to release up to 15 lots. The 6 that were already released and 9 more. And then
Correct.
He'll come back in and request the remaining lots, but he won't get those until the $70,000 payment is made to the town and the overlay is done on Mount Pleasant Street. Is that the understanding?
Yes, this is Jim. Yes, it is.
Steve Durrett, yes, that's true. That's correct.
All right, so Jim, I know that Board of Health wanted the septic in and Fred had some conditions before he could get the lots released. Are those all satisfied?
So he cannot connect even the first lot to the joint septic system until the septic system is fully functional. So he has building permits for 6 lots, and those are connected to sewer. When he applies for his building permit for the 7th lot, the communal septic system will need to be fully functional and verified by the Board of Health before he can get that building permit. That's the way that we wrote the decision and the way that the Board of Health will review the building permits. The Board of Health has to sign off on each building permit because of the septic.
Let's turn to the board for questions on this. If anyone on the board has a question. Hazel, go ahead.
Yeah, do we need to add anything to this release, Jim? I mean, any specific language? Any conditions?
No, your motion would be that the board release the following lot numbers from the project covenant, and that the performance bond is adequate to cover those lots. That's it, simply. But Steve needs to give you the lot numbers. Because I don't have my internet connection, I don't see the numbers.
Yeah, they're on
Yeah,
they're on the screen.
on the
Yeah.
form.
Yeah.
4, 5, 7, 8, 24, 9, 21, 22, 23.
Okay. Does anyone else have questions? Okay. I will make a motion to release lots 4, 5, 7, 8, 24, 9, 21, 22, and 23 from the project covenant at Silver Hollow Estates on Mount Pleasant Street.
I can second that motion, Mark.
Great, thanks, Tim. Any discussion of the motion? Jim Robbins, is that satisfactory?
It sounds fine.
Okay. Anyone else have any comments on the motion, or? Okay, hearing none, I'll do a roll call. All those in favor? Hazel Nurse?
Yes to approve.
Okay, Peter Bouchard?
Yes to approve.
Tim Kaler?
Yes, Mark.
Jim Ball?
Yes, Mark.
Okay, and I'll vote yes as well. That's 5-0 in favor. I just want to congratulate Peter Bouchard on his first official act.
Thank you.
How does it feel, Peter? That's welcome to the board. We're glad to have you.
I'm excited to help change the town. So I'm looking forward to learning from you guys, and I'm gonna sit down with Jim tomorrow and kind of start learning. So excited.
Well, it'll be a short 5 years.
I'm sure. Thank you, though, Mark.
All right. Well, thank you for stepping up and running. We certainly appreciate it. It's pretty exciting to have races and have people who want to get involved. So thank you so much for doing it.
Thanks, Mark.
I'm going to move on to the next agenda item, which is, Kristen, can you go back to, all right, I've got it here, sorry.
Thank you very much, all.
I'm sorry, 228 Ruggles, we're going to move to the end. So we'll do a continued public hearing for West Park Drive extension on the definitive subdivision plan. Jim Robbins, I'm going to start with you to kind of summarize where we left off. And if you could comment on Peter's obligation, because this is a public hearing, I'm not sure if he's missed too many of the hearings or if he can do a Mullen waiver. So could you just clarify that as well?
Sure. So I'll take that item first. Peter, the law reads you can miss one public hearing and review the files, review the minutes, and then sign what's called a Mullen waiver, named after John Mullen, who came up with the idea that allows you to vote on the proceedings. But I believe that we've had 4 public hearings on this project. That would be too many for you to qualify under the Mullen waiver. That would mean you can still listen and ask questions and participate in the discussion. But when the board finally decides to vote on this plan, you will not be able to vote. I apologize for that. It's nothing that we can do about it. It's the way the law reads.
I totally understand. It makes sense to me. So thank you for explaining it, and I look forward to listening.
Okay, thank you very much, Peter. And for the board and the folks that are listening at home, at the last meeting, we heard our peer reviewer, our traffic consultant peer reviewer, McMahon Associates, provide a discussion and a review of the West Park Drive and Flanders Road intersection, as well as Old Flanders Road in the intersection with East Main Street. At that time, we asked the applicant's traffic consultant, Vanessa Associates, Scott Thornton and company, to please review our peer reviewers' comments and provide written comments back to us, which they did and were distributed to our consultant, McMahon Associates, for review. That is the discussion that we anticipate having tonight. So because I can't see who's in attendance at the meeting, if Jeffrey is here from McMahon Associates, he may have some reaction, but first I would like to hear from Scott Thornton at Vanessa, and if he would give a brief overview of his response to McMahon Associates' comments.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Jim. Thanks for that lead in. For the record, my name's Scott Thornton. I'm with Vanessa Associates, and as Jim indicated, we prepared the traffic study for the West Park Drive extension and also the response to comments document to McMahon Associates review of our work. And in general, the comments from McMahon sort of boil down to discussion points related to the study area, safety, site distance, background traffic growth, trip generation, distribution, and intersection geometry and signal operations. And I had a brief discussion with Jim earlier today, and my understanding, as he had indicated, that McMahon has begun the review of our responses to their comments, and we're looking forward to working with them on additional, if there's additional review that's required. In terms of the study area, there were some questions related to intersections that we did not include in the study area. One of them was the Research Drive ramp intersections with Route 9 eastbound. And from our perspective, the extension of West Park Drive would be relieving traffic flow at that intersection. Given the difficulty in modeling that intersection properly in terms of the queuing that occurs, particularly in the evening time period, we thought that since the intersection operations would only be expected to improve with the connection of West Park Drive out to Flanders Road, that it wasn't relevant to include that intersection in our study area. In terms of safety, we did look at additional years of crash statistics for the intersections in the study area, as McMahon had requested. We found no. I think the question was to see if there were any changes in the crash trends at the locations, and we didn't really see much. The connector road at Research Drive intersection was the crash average and the crash rate actually decreased. That was the high crash location in the study area. And for the last 2 years, and at the time, the data that we were working with only went up to 2017. So we included those last 2 years for this analysis, and the crash rate decreased at that location, but at the Washington Street and Flanders Road intersection, the crash rate actually increased. But in terms of the overall numbers, the crashes are not particularly significant at any of the other locations. So one location, the crash rate decreased. One location, the crash rate increased. And at another location, the crash rate stayed the same. It didn't change. So no real changes in trends that we observed. In terms of the site distances, we were asked to look at the site distance for the proposed West Park Drive extension out to Flanders Road. And we had done this initially, and McMahon, because there were some, because of the way the improvements have been designed, we're widening to the north on Flanders Road, which pushed the vantage point of the driver's eye exiting West Park Drive extension further north. So McMahon just asked us to redo that site distance measurement based on the new driver's eye location, which we did. We had to do it through the existing survey and AutoCAD software that we have, because we weren't able to get out there and dig through the piles of snow. But in general, you know, we still meet the expected minimum site distance requirements for stopping site distance at the intersection, and that's what's critical at this location. You know, it's also proposed to be under signal control, which will obviously have a much higher site distance profile. But again, we did look at the site distances as requested. There were some questions regarding the background traffic growth and developments to include in the study, in the traffic study. We had initially done this assessment in 2018, and it was updated for the most recent filing last year. There were two additional developments that have popped up in that time, both of them located north of our site on the opposite side of Route 9 at 4400 Computer Drive and at 8 Technology Square, which are basically across from each other. And you know, we had noted that when McMahon did their traffic evaluation of the Flanders Road condition that they had presented last time, they had included those developments in the background traffic growth rate, noting that the traffic increases from those projects could be included as a background growth feature. So we did the same. We would assume that they would also be included in our same background growth rate. There was also a question about any changes to the signal equipment that would be required at the intersection of Research Drive and Connector Road, based on mitigation that Westborough Office Park has to do. So there are changes that are required at that intersection based on their MEPA approval. And the only changes that we noted in terms of revisions to the signal equipment would be relocation of a pedestrian pedestal pole on the southeast corner, and modifications to the corresponding sidewalk, because the plan is to add a exclusive right turn lane on Connector Road northbound to head into Research Drive. So there's some minor modifications that would be necessary really for pedestrian sake. Next item really related to trip generation, and McMahon was just looking for comments on the type of, or the approach that we use with the trip generation. We feel that the rates or the equations that we used, which are from ITE, are most representative of developments at the size that we were reviewing for the Westborough Office Park. It's also, that's based on as developments increase in size, typically the rate at which they generate trips decreases, and that's what's captured in the equation. And so we provided that feedback to them. McMahon had requested verification that the trip rate or the distribution that we had through headed through to the center of Westborough and using Flanders Road was appropriate. And I think we had sort of touched on this at the last hearing, that we had a little bit over 14% of residents, of employees that would be expected to come from the town of Westborough, and to some extent, the most direct route is through Flanders Road and out to East Main Street. And again, when we had initially done this analysis, we had looked at it when before the Lyman Street intersection improvements had been done, where queues were routinely backing up along Route 9. And we had anticipated that even with the delays at the East Main Street intersection, that Flanders Road would still be more of an attractive route for employees to get back to their homes in Westborough. I think maybe since that time, there may be some with the improvements to the Lyman Street intersection, there may be more of an attraction to use Route 9 to travel out to other locations further west to get into the center of town. But that's sort of the justification that we had used. And in terms of, there were also requests to look at improvements at the intersections, both of either end of Flanders Road, where it intersects with Connector Road and also with East Main Street. And really in terms of improving the delays at those locations, there's really not much that can be done, with the exception of traffic signalization. And I think we heard from Jeff at McMahon last time that although the intersections currently meet signal warrant levels, that and Jeff can comment on that tonight. My understanding was that they're still not recommending that signals be installed at those locations. I know that we had the same thought, and we've looked at Flanders Road and East Main Street for a number of projects, and that's always been the concern, that if you make that route even more attractive, it becomes even more. The likelihood is that it'll be used even more it'll become even more of a cut-through route. And so at this point, we're also not recommending the installation of traffic signals at either end of Flanders Road there. In terms of the intersection geometry, speaking of the West Park Drive intersection with Flanders Road, there were some questions about the geometry and pursuing consolidation of driveways across the street in order to sort of reduce the access points and conflict points that would exist at the intersection. Currently, we're tying into the 129 Flanders Road driveway as part of the signal, and directly across from the West Park Drive extension is one of the driveways for 133 Flanders Road. And it's really a supplemental driveway. It's not, it's at the end of a short parking lot where the main parking lot is further east near a larger driveway, a wider driveway. And so we had proposed having this intersection opposite West Park Drive to just become an entrance only, so that so we don't have to put them into the signal operations, but they're also that access gets maintained, and we, to the extent that we can close that driveway, we'll work with with that landowner to do so. But I think what we have right now works from a functional perspective. McMahon had also made some recommendations for lane configuration for West Park Drive, which we plan to implement. Really just changes to accommodate the through movement coming down from West Park Drive into 133 Flanders Road. Not that we expect it to be a major or a common maneuver, but it is something that we can incorporate. There were also some questions regarding signal clearance calculations for the proposed intersection. And we plan on doing that as part of the design process when we get to that level. And I think the last comment was really related to traffic monitoring. And the question, I think the question that that McMahon was looking for was to identify if signal warrants are met at the intersections of East Main Street and Flanders Road, as well as operations at West Park Drive and Flanders Road. And, you know, from our perspective, the work that McMahon had just done indicated that the intersections of Flanders Road and East Main Street and with Connector Road currently meet traffic signal warrant levels under existing conditions. And we would expect that, you know, after the project is built and, you know, time goes on, additional development occurs in the area, traffic volumes are only likely to increase. So you know, we don't anticipate the need to identify if signal warrant levels will continue to be met at those intersections. We absolutely intend on conducting traffic monitoring at the West Park Drive and Flanders Road intersection to make sure that the traffic projections are consistent with how things work out. And I believe there's a requirement for traffic monitoring under MEPA approvals as well. So I think that's sort of the summary of, not a very short summary, but it is a summary of our responses. And if you have any questions or if you want to go right to McMahon, I'll be here to answer anything.
Yeah, why don't we see if Jeff Bandini's ready to comment, and then we can turn to the board for questions.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Jeff, are you ready to respond to?
Yeah, can everyone hear me okay? All set?
Yep.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the record, Jeff Bandini's project manager with McMahon Associates. So we did receive the comments that Mr. Thornton had just addressed in responses to our West Park Drive extension peer review and also our Flanders Road traffic assessment. So generally, we agree with the responses that excuse me, Mr. Thornton provided. Certainly will provide feedback formally to those comments in case there are any specifics that need to be addressed that the board can be aware of as they continue through this process. By inspection, we did review the comments. So I just wanted to go over a few that we're likely to respond to that may require some additional study or at least a response for information or request some information from Mr. Thornton and DAI's group. The first being the inclusion of the Research Drive Route 9 eastbound ramps. Just going through the study material and comparing the no build and build volumes, it did look like there would be an increase in traffic at that location. Understandably so, the construction of the West Park Drive extension and the signal at the south end is likely to relieve some level of traffic on that end. The construction of the additional development is likely to lead to additional trips on the north end as well, even though some of those trips will be alleviated by that construction, as I mentioned. So our response will likely just compare those volumes that VAI put together and just make sure that we're understanding correctly exactly what the material is put together and provide VAI and Mr. Thornton's group an opportunity to provide those formal responses, which we can again review once those are complete. A lot of the comments 3 through 8 essentially generally agree with. There's some specifics that we just want to make sure that we're addressed as far as the crash rate and the additional background trips and things like that, that we anticipate that there will be no issue in resolving. Some of the additional information that you may request is due to the proposed traffic signal alignment and operations. And we certainly understand at this stage of the development, the signal design at the extension is not likely to be complete, at all. It's certainly a preliminary conceptual plan at this point. Certainly as we get through the signal design process and approvals and things like that, there's certainly portions that can be ironed out in terms of equipment and lane configurations and striping and things like that. But we just want some additional clarification on, it appears that putting together the modification of the lane configuration, which we commented on, may improve operations at the intersection. So I think that's certainly favorable from the applicant's perspective. So, we just kind of want to look at those to make sure that, we're correct in that assumption. Understandable that not a lot of traffic would travel through from the extension to the 133 Flanders Road, which would be designated as an entrance only according to the conceptual design plan. But so, that would indicate that, the rightmost lane acting as a right turn only lane would only serve to improve operations. However, in evaluating the operations of the signal, they use the, I would say standard clearance calculation rates, but certainly calculations that would be normalized on, any number of intersections in the area, being 4 seconds of yellow, 2 seconds of red. And based on the geometry of this intersection, it looks like some additional clearance time may be required in order to make sure that a vehicle can safely pass through the intersection with the change interval. So those operations may, increase delay at the intersection by virtue of losing a few seconds out of the cycle length, each from each approach. So we just want to make sure that that's not to the extreme detriment of the proposed operations of the signal. In other words, not causing it to go from a acceptable level of service D to a more at capacity level of service E, for instance, or maybe even from a capacity level of service E to a capacity level of service F, which we certainly wouldn't want to see. In terms would likely require some additional, investigating of other means of improvements, be it changes in cycle length, additional lanes, things like that. So we would just request a little bit more information on that. We certainly understand we're not at the point yet where we're reviewing controller specs and signal equipment and things like that, but certainly we would request that we look at level of service tables and just some sort of initial revision of the conceptual design that was included as part of the study. We certainly understand the merits of the traffic signal warrant, and the installation of a traffic signal there, being making the intersection of Flanders Road and East Main a little bit more of an attractive means of access to Westborough Center. Being that it meets existing, and Mr. Thornton did mention that traffic is expected to grow at this location. We certainly, from a town's perspective, do not want, and for folks that live on Flanders Road, quite frankly, to see a dramatic increase in traffic, even more than anticipated, because it is now, or would be easier to make that southbound left-hand turn. But we're certainly sensitive to the nature that, as this development goes in, additional development goes in, it gets to a certain saturation point where it's no longer attractive as it's by means of failing in terms of like, it's not even functional for the folks that need to use it, never mind the folks that may want to see it as an attractive source. So there becomes a saturation point where eventually it may need a traffic signal. So we just want to make sure that, this applicant is, prepared to offer some level of mitigation should that need be warranted at some point in the future. And that's not to say that it would be encapsulated in some point within the monitoring program, because we understand the monitoring program, may see some sort of shift in traffic due to, assuming the pandemic ends sometime soon, in coordination with, this project, getting built. We just want to make sure that, the town is safeguarded against potential dramatic increases in traffic should that happen in the future. So that's basically a summary of our initial feedback of VAI's responses, and we certainly appreciate them sending over the letter for us to review in advance of this hearing. McMahon did not have the opportunity to respond formally, and our hope at this point was that we could bring our initial responses to this dialogue and incorporate any sort of initial feedback from VAI in person and from the town that I think would be helpful to include in our responses. So I certainly welcome any questions from the town at this time, or if there's any sort of clarification that we may need as we go through this process.
Great. Thank you, Jeff, for that. I think we'll start with Jim Robbins if Jim has any questions or comments, and then we'll go to the board.
Thank you. Thanks, Mark. I don't have any additional questions. I do have a comment. I find it interesting, and it makes sense that if you improve an intersection like Flanders Road with East Main Street by virtue of installation of signal, you actually generate more traffic. It makes sense. It's similar to if you had a dirt road and you pave it, you're going to generate more traffic and also increase the speed on the road. So you may be creating another undesirable circumstance by trying to improve a currently undesirable circumstance. I think that's something that the board needs to think about. However, I still would proceed with trying to fund in the future that intersection, to be prepared for the day that you would want to put a signal there. I think that's a very good point that was made. If it's actually easier to go, say, to the post office on East Main by going out West Park Drive to Research Drive to connect a road to Route 9 and coming home that way on East Main Street, as opposed to going down Flanders Road, the much more direct route, only because of the traffic on Flanders Road. It would seem to me that if in fact that is true, then you would be creating a lot more traffic on Flanders Road if you installed the signal. So that's something for the planning board to think about. It's my comment.
All right, questions from the board? Hazel?
I wanted to ask about Washington Street, the intersection down there. And Jeff, in your opinion, do you think this is going to cause people to use that Washington Street intersection to get onto Route 9 going east as a pass through around?
Just trying to locate exactly where you're.
Washington comes into Flanders, and I know that he talked about the accident level at Washington Street. Generally, I don't think it's used a lot at the moment. There are residences along it, and then there's businesses at the other end where it comes into Coslin Drive, and then you can go eastbound. Actually, there's a traffic light at the intersection of Coslin and Route 9, so you can go either east or west there. But I just wondered whether that's an intersection that perhaps should be monitored after the project opens. Jim, I don't know what your feelings are on that either.
Thank you, Hazel. I actually do have a comment on that. So that's a very good point. I think, however, that when the EMC campus opens the road that connects Flanders Road to Coslin and Route 9 at that signalized intersection, that will take away the traffic that might, on the short term, be using Washington Street. And I understand your concern for that because there are a lot of residents on Washington Street and a lot of commercial as well. You don't want to be generating additional traffic to a residential neighborhood. But I do think that when the EMC through road is opened, that will no longer be a thought because Washington Street is a windy country road to get to Coslin Drive, whereas the EMC road is a straight road that was designed for industrial traffic.
Hazel, does that answer your question?
Yeah, that was my question
You feel like
essentially.
you need to hear from Jeff on it or from Scott?
No, I said my concern was because of the residences on there and, you know, this is not the only project. I mean, there are a couple of other projects that are looking at being built up in that area and, you know, if they have a choice, may come out the West Park Drive extension versus coming out on coming out on the main part at the end there. So I'm just, you know, I want to make sure, because I mean, I'm thinking of all the ways that I can get around, you know, by coming out West Park Drive and avoiding that whole mishmash at, you know, Connector Road and Research Drive. So I just was something that I had some questions about.
Hey, respond through the chair.
Sure, Jeff, go ahead.
So that, I was just pulling up some research as we were speaking. And so that intersection of Washington and Flanders was included as part of the original study area that VAI produced in the traffic study. So through the monitoring program that, you know, we recommended as part of our comments, that intersection would likely be included as part of that monitoring program so that we could demonstrate the impact of the West Park Drive extension on that Washington Street Flanders Road intersection as well.
Okay, well, it was not listed as one of the places that was going to be monitored, which is the reason I asked the question.
Okay, fair enough.
All right. Any other comments on that or?
No, thank you.
Any other
That's
questions?
fine.
Okay, thanks, Hazel. Any other questions from the board? Okay. Mark Veralt, I saw your hand up. Did you have a comment?
Yes, I just wanted to point out that truck traffic is prohibited from Washington Street right now. It's posted at both sides. So there won't be any truck traffic. And if someone really wanted to take the shortcut, they would take Freiburg Parkway down to Flanders Road. But you know, once you're at that end, if the majority of the people in the park are from, you know, 1800 West Park Drive up, they would have to go out of their way to go that way when they can just loop around and get on Route 9. Unless there's something bad going on Route 9, people naturally don't go the longer way.
Okay, thank you for that comment, Mark. Anything else from the board?
Mr. Chair, this is Tim.
Tim,
A question
go ahead.
for you first. I've read all the documentation. I've read these responses. This is a peer review of a traffic study for a road entering Flanders Road, correct?
Right.
So where are we right now in the process? I appreciated Mr. Bandini's summary of these responses. I guess I would ask, I think, McMahon, what issues remain that would cause Caruth to, you know, need to provide some mitigation or a change in study? I'm not sure where we're going with this. So what are the issues that are outstanding that we're processing and need to make a decision on to approve the extension?
Well, again, we have to decide if we're happy with the results of the traffic study, Tim. So
Okay.
if we have as a board still have questions about whether the initial traffic study and the peer review process has satisfied those questions and that there won't be any problems created from this. You know, if as a board we decide that, you know, we're concerned about something, then we can enter into discussions for a solution. And that's it. You know, that would be a negotiation process, I think.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I will say that, you know, I am concerned about increased traffic on Flanders Road, but the fact that it already meets warrant levels suggests to me that, you know, the town has a problem it needs to fix at the end of Flanders Road at both ends. And I think that solution is bigger than this project in the sense that you know, if you're gonna put a signal in, that's gotta be, I think, almost a political decision through the Board of Selectmen. And I think it might need to be accompanied by sidewalk improvements and other infrastructure that would.
Well,
make
Route 30
it
is, I believe Route 30 is a public highway too. So the citing the signal as it was with Lyman Road is going to require state improvements. So I'd return to it. So are we making that assessment tonight, Mark, or are we needing to wait till McMahon responds more formally to the responses given by Vanessa?
We're not making any decisions tonight.
Okay.
So, yeah, so I think, you know, again, it comes down to whether the peer reviewer is satisfied with Vanessa's either responses or they've come into agreement as to how to redesign that intersection to satisfy the peer review's comments and satisfy the planning board.
So we can't close the public hearing tonight?
We could,
If you-
if somebody would feel confident with it. Again, I don't know if the board wants to wait for Jeff to formally respond, or if we're happy with the summary that Jeff is.
Can I comment?
Yeah, Jim, go ahead.
Yeah, I think what's getting lost here a little bit is while I think the information is valuable, I think with regard to Flanders Road and 30, I don't think it's telling us anything we didn't know. I think that this light and this outlet down to Flanders is going to improve the intersection up at Route 9. I think that's the current problem. And so the fact that there's going to be more development going on, well, we want development for economic development, but it's not related to this particular extension. So I think what's getting lost in this discussion, potentially, maybe not, I just have a sense, is that I think this is an improvement in that it'll improve the whole Route 9 problem right now. I think the majority of the people that are going to take this road are going to Southborough or Hopkinton, not going to take that as a route to get to Flanders Road to get to downtown. I think most people now take Route 9 because it's so dramatically improved. So while I think it's valuable, I think that it's something we all knew. And I echo Jim Robbins' comments. I'm intrigued by the fact that if you put the light in, you're probably going to draw more traffic down Flanders Road, and maybe that's not a good idea. So it's a real challenge there. But I think that I would suggest we close the public hearing because I don't think we're going to learn anything further. And I don't want to run into a time challenge with the funds that we've got for this light. So that's just my overall feeling.
Jim, thanks. I think those are good comments, and it kind of echoes what I'm feeling on it. You know, I do think there is a problem at Flanders and East Main Street, but it's an existing problem, and it's not, you know, and I actually had a resident from Flanders Road say to me that they didn't want a light there because it would, you know, their feeling was that it would increase traffic. So, you know, I back to my point, I think it's the town needs to come up with a solution for those residents, but I don't think it's the responsibility of this project or this applicant to solve that problem. I think that problem exists already. Does that make sense? All right. Peter, you've been quiet. Do you have anything?
I'm just, you know, I'm a little concerned on just the increased traffic, just based on living in town, and you know, I've avoided Flanders during rush hour traffic. If you drive by Flanders at, you know, 8 or 30 in the morning or 5 at night, it's completely backed up. I'm not saying that putting a stoplight in is the right move at this moment, but it's definitely something that we need to keep on evaluating, because if people aren't going to want to avoid that area, that's not what we want either. So, you know, I think we should keep on moving forward with this. So that's all I have at this moment.
Thanks, Peter. All right, anything else?
Mark, Lisa had a comment. I don't know if you saw that.
Oh, no, I didn't see that. Lisa, did you have something to say?
Yes, I do. I just wanted to provide a clarification on something Tim said. Route 30 is not a state road. That is a town-owned road. The only state road in Westborough is 495 and Route 9. Just for the records.
Okay, thanks. Former
Jim
DPW head,
Robbins,
I was under a different impression about signaling on Route 30. So,
Yeah, DOT did come in and do a tip project there,
okay,
but it was like a quasi-town DOT project type thing.
all right. Thank you. So
You're
I'd make a
welcome.
motion, Mr. Chairman, to close the public hearing then.
okay, why don't we hold on that for 1 second, Tim? I wanted to hear from Jim Robbins first, just to see if there's any other unresolved issues before we close the public hearing. We haven't had any, haven't given the public a chance to comment either, which we have to do. So let's, I don't think we're quite ready for a motion yet. If you could bear with me with that. Okay.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's correct. You do need to allow opportunity for the public to comment before you close the public hearing. Also, I caution you that once you close the public hearing, you cannot receive any new information. So, for example, McMahon has not submitted a final report yet based on their reaction to Vanessa's response to their comments. So Jeffrey and I talked on the phone earlier today. He was going to hear Vanessa's comments, maybe ask a couple clarifying questions, and then write his final review letter. I think you want that entered into your public hearing information. So you close the public hearing tonight, you'll not be able to do that. Now, that said, that doesn't mean you couldn't close the hearing at your next meeting and proceed to a decision. You can always give the decision the same night you close the public hearing. The advantage to that is you can introduce additional information if you need to support your decision. It's a process that this board has used, I'd say, the majority of the time. So that's my comment on the process. Also, also another point to support what Lisa said, the light on, for example, on Lyman Street, as well as the one that's on Milk Street by Oak Street, has to be approved by the state. So they met the state warrants for a traffic signal. The town cannot install a traffic signal on its streets unless it meets the Mass State Highway warrant standards. So once it does, then you work with the state to get the light approved by them to be installed. So every light that we have on town roads has to meet the state standard to warrant the traffic light. So we already know that the intersection of Flanders Road and East Main has met the warrants. But that's just a point of information going forward, because a lot of people I hear say, well, the solution to this is a traffic light. And it's not that simple. It has to be rationally proven that the intersection has the volume of traffic to warrant a light.
Do you think we can have the necessary reports that we need by the next meeting, which is next Tuesday, so that perhaps we can try to wrap that up at this point?
I refer that question to McMahon.
Right, I was trying to, yeah.
Permission to answer?
Yeah, please, go ahead.
Yeah, we've done a review of Vanessa's comments at this time, and certainly welcome the discussion here tonight. So at this point, I think we've had enough information to provide responses to those comments and provide that information to the town in advance of the next hearing. You said that was next Tuesday?
Right.
Or the Tuesday after?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's important to have that finalized document before we make a decision.
Okay.
I do have one other comment through the chair.
Jim, go ahead.
This is a road construction project that allows the office parks to spread the burden at rush hour, whether it's the morning or the evening peak hour. Most traffic engineers, and I welcome Vanessa and McMahon, we have two great traffic firms in our midst this evening to comment on this, but generally when you have more alternate routes to a destination, you relieve the burden from any one of the most popular destination routes. So, for example, coming out of West Park Drive currently, you have one route. You have to come out to Research Drive to connect to road or get on the ramp to Route 9 eastbound. There's no alternative. All of the traffic goes through that set of lights. If you open West Park Drive and you live in let's say you live in Southborough and you work on West Park Drive, You now can take Flanders Road to Route 85, never touch Route 9, never touch the intersection of Connector Road and Research Drive. So you've relieved the burden on that intersection. If someone is going to downtown, if they live in Westborough and they work on West Park Drive now, they're still going the same route. They're going to either go out to Research Drive to Connector Road to go to Flanders Road, or they're going to go down West Park Drive to go to Flanders Road. Either way, they're going to go to Flanders Road, unless they live further west and then they may get on Route 9 westbound. But that's not going to change their way home. So this is really a road construction project. It's not a development project because no new frontage, no new building lots are created. However, it makes West Park Drive much more attractive for future development. So we know that there are going to be future projects in the very near term, and those are the ones that will generate more traffic. Those are the projects you need to look to for mitigation.
Okay. Thanks, Jim. I think those are good points. So just to clarify, the board can instruct you to draft a decision for next Tuesday to incorporate any comments that come in from McMahon in that time, and then we could close the public hearing at next Tuesday's meeting and go make a decision as a board on the project. Right? And that's how I understand the process.
That's one alternative. Yes, that's one alternative.
Okay. So the other thing I just wanted to clarify, because I think there was another outstanding issue outside of traffic, which was the easement for the trail along West Park Drive, and I think you had said that it was resolved, but I just wanted to get that on the record. If you could explain that to the board.
Is Mark Farrow on the call?
Yes.
Yes.
I think, Mark, that's for you to address.
Okay, what was the question? I was distracted there.
Mark, we had a question at our last meeting about the width of the trail easement and whether we could accommodate a 12-foot width along the entire length of West Park Drive. And I know there was some wetlands issues that made it impossible to actually build it 12 feet wide, but I think we had requested that the easement be 12 feet wide. And I'm not sure what the resolution was on that, if you could address it.
I think we addressed this before, and we have several issues, and one is we are sandwiched between wetlands, the abutter. Further up was sandwiched between the detention basins, and another really big reason is that we don't really know what we're going to do there at 2100 and 2300 West Park Drive. It's we're already severely restricted by the wetlands bylaw that was enacted a few years ago that has mandatory setbacks. Those lots are surrounded by wetland. And so to provide the 18 feet that the multi-use trail people are looking for, they're not looking for 12 feet, they're looking for 18 feet. And without knowing what we're going to be putting in, we'll work with them in the future, but we're not willing to change that now at this point. The plans are designed, the state approved them, and we want to see a multi-use trail in there, but we also have to consider the economic viability of doing this. And we'll work with them later when we know what we're doing there, but we don't want to give that up now.
Okay, so can we get a written response to their letter then from Caruth that addresses their issues? And we'll take it back to the traffic committee and let them know what the results are.
Sure. I mean, this all came up at the definitive plan. I mean, at the preliminary plan approval, we were kind of hoping that this went, and quite frankly, it makes us a bit nervous that now we're after spending all this time and money and getting the state grant and everything, and here we're at the 1 yard line, and now our partner is kind of, retrading the
Well, I
deal.
think the town has spent a lot of energy facilitating this grant, so I don't think that criticism is necessarily warranted. But I think you can understand the town's concern about having a successful trail there, and looking towards the future of that trail and making sure that it's viable for grant opportunities and viable for use. So, this is the point to get those issues ironed out, or we may not ever get them ironed out. And I've been in meetings with other developers who said, "Oh yeah, we'll take care of that later," and never did. So not to say that you wouldn't, but it seems to me that we need to come to some type of agreement there. Whether it be to not widen it or to, I think the request was to only to grant the easement to that width, not to actually build it to that width, and that the town would endeavor to build it at their own expense if we were able to widen it. So I don't find that as an unreasonable, but I guess I need an explanation, a written explanation as to why that's not a reasonable request, so that I can go back to that committee and explain to them why we're not honoring their request on that.
Okay. Well, like I said, it all came up in the preliminary plan approval, but I think they have to be concerned about the economic viability of what we have left there. As was pointed out, we can't build any more than what's already permitted. The lot 2300 and 2100 already have frontage on West Park Drive. We do want the multi-use trail in there, but there has to be some balance that, if this group is willing to do this to us now at the 1 yard line, what happens when we want to build something there?
So I think this did come up in the definitive plan, and I don't think we ever had a concrete resolution to it. You said you weren't going to do it, and we asked you to reconsider it and work with the traffic committee on a solution, and I don't hear a solution. I just hear us back at the same, well, we're not going to do it. And my issue with it is the traffic, bike and pedestrian committee, they're not concerned with the economic future of Caruth Capital, right? Like, that's a question for the planning board, whether we're going to balance the economic benefits there against the trail needs, right? The traffic committee is more concerned with producing a trail that will be viable for use and give us grant opportunities. So to ask them to reconsider their request, you can do that, but really it's a question for the planning board to decide as to whether we are willing to balance those economic issues with the needs of the trail. So I'm just asking you for a written response to that. If you can't produce that, then we'll have to make a decision without it.
Sure. I mean, don't let perfection be the enemy of achieving this. I mean, it's something we work with them for a couple of years with putting in other trails. It's just, the last second stick up is not the way to treat a partner, and it's we've probably conceded $300,000 or $400,000, and the Concom didn't want us to put a boardwalk over probably about a 50-foot wetlands crossing. So now we're going to have to go cross country for what, $150,000, $200,000. The abutter didn't want the road next to them, so we're spending $100,000 on moving the road closer to the wetland and putting the bike trail on their side. I mean, and it's something that we're not going to get one more square foot of space. It's just going to allow a project.
I hate to say this, but if the project isn't approved, you won't have to spend any of that money, right? So I think you need to come up with a solution that
Mark.
will make the board happy. And
Mark.
considering.
Mark, I think you're being unreasonable here.
Mark,
You think
I
I'm being
think, I
unreasonable?
thought we
I think you're being
resolved,
very unreasonable.
yeah, I thought we had resolved this all the way
We
back
had resolved it.
on the preliminary plan. So I don't know why now
I totally
it's coming
agree.
up again.
I
So my
completely agree.
understanding was that, we had not resolved it, that they were going to respond to the 12-foot wide request. And so if you're telling me that you're happy with this resolution, that we're not going to get a 12-foot easement, I'll have to consider it.
All right, well, I thought it had been resolved and I'd have it come up again. I'm very surprised to have it come up again. Because
Okay.
the preliminary plan, I thought it resolved this problem.
Okay.
Just as a clarification for Hazel and for Jim, the preliminary plan had an easement that was shown on the plan that was variable width. And it was variable width depending on the location of the trail. In the case of their abutter at 139 Flanders, they couldn't get a wider easement because the property owner didn't even want the trail anywhere near him and didn't want the road anywhere near him. So he wasn't willing to give a wider easement. And the trail needed to go on his side of the road. In another place, there was a pinch point that Mark mentioned that the Conservation Commission would not let them encroach on the wetland buffer. So in that case, the trail is only 8 feet wide. In some locations, it is 12 feet wide, but throughout the trail it is variable width. And that easement is shown on the plan. And it was shown on the preliminary plan. So as it stands now, the easement is consistent between the preliminary and the definitive plan.
Okay, thank you. That's what I thought. And I knew there was a variation in the size of it depending on the topography and depending on the plant, depending on how it ran next to various properties because of the constrictions because of the property owners. So that's why, as I said, I'm surprised it's coming up now. And, I thought the way it had been done on the preliminary plan was correct according, and, as much has been given as could be given.
So here's my take on this, right? We got the preliminary plan where the design was variable width. And then after that, we got comments from the Bike and Pedestrian Committee, which is now the Traffic Committee. And one of their requests was that the easement be 12-foot wide, standard width, and that the actual construction that Caruth is going to undertake would not have to be 12-foot wide, but that the easement would just be that long. So
Yeah, but
not at,
you can't,
I don't
Mark,
think
you
it's
can't do that.
Mark, you can't give an easement that is more than is possible to give. I mean, in other words, they may like a 12-foot easement, but if it's going on someone else's property or it's impinging on the conservation area, you can't give that easement. So my feeling is I would like to see, I mean, if the traffic committee is so hung up on this, then they should have written us and said, all right, we don't like it at certain places. I mean, all we've heard back from them is they want a 12-foot. Yeah, but it's unreasonable. All they've done is come back and say, all right, we want a 12-foot wide easement. It's not possible in certain areas on this particular piece of
so
property.
when you say it's not possible, you say it's not possible to construct it.
That's right. So you can't give an easement.
Why can't the easement be that? I think what they were asking was for the easement to be that wide.
You
With
can't.
the idea that maybe they would be able to overcome those obstacles in the future.
No, you can't work that way. I mean, you give an easement for a certain amount. If you don't go back and then, you don't give an easement for something that you don't plan to build on. I mean, you don't give an easement thinking that later you're going to come back. And particularly in this situation where there are areas where the Conservation Commission was very clear about where things could not go. And so they moved the whole thing because of that. So you don't just give a blanket easement sometimes based on the topography and the usefulness of what you're going to do. So, I'm sorry, but I think this conversation is over, and I think that the preliminary plan is the way to go on it.
Okay, thank you, Hazel. I appreciate those comments. All right, so having beat that horse to death, we will move past that, and I'll contemplate that over the next week. Why don't we turn to the public? Kristen, was there any public comments?
I do not have anything in the planning email at this point.
Okay. Jim Robbins, do we have any other outstanding issues then?
No, all of the letters have been read into the record. We just need to receive McMahon's final review, final peer review. So our next meeting is next Tuesday, a week from tonight. You could keep the hearing open to then. I'd recommend that you do. And if I can work out the decision with Karut's representatives as well as our peer review, we can get a draft. But understand we always try to get a draft to the applicant for their review and comments before the board meeting. So that may push us to the first meeting in April, but I'm just letting you know that we will endeavor to have a draft for next week. We'll see what we can do.
Okay. So if there's no other questions on that.
Mr. Egan has his hand up.
Yeah. Peter, did you have your hand up?
No, not at this point, but Chris, you can go.
Mr. Egan does.
Okay, Chris
Thank-
Egan,
thank-
go ahead.
Thanks, Peter. Hi, Planning Board. It's been a long project. I want to thank everyone on the board for working this thing through. And we'll get a letter to the board like you wanted, Mr. Chairman.
Great.
We do feel betrayed by our partner about being stuck up at the last minute, and I just want to set the right level of expectation, which is we always try to do our best here in town, and as Mark said, we don't want great to be the enemy of good. This is going to be a really good project. It's not going to make everyone super happy, but I think it's going to make everyone generally happy. Thank you.
Okay, so we will move past that issue for now, and I will make a motion to continue this hearing to March 16th at 6:30.
Second that, Mark.
Okay, Jim Ball seconded. We'll do a roll call vote. Well, first of all, any discussion on that? Okay, we'll do a roll call vote. Hazel, how do you vote?
Yes.
Jim Ball, how do you vote?
Yes, Mark.
Tim Kaler, how do you vote?
Yes.
Okay, and I vote yes as well. That's 4-0. I don't think Peter can vote on this, so Peter, you'll have to wait for the next agenda item. All right, thank you all for coming in. I appreciate your time. We're going to move on to the next item on our agenda, which is a.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, so next item on the agenda is a discussion of the Chapter 61A property at 64 Otis Street. I don't know if you're familiar with that. I'm going to ask Jim to summarize it for you, and then we can have a discussion and a vote. Jim Robbins, go ahead.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, Chapter 61 of the state general laws allows a property to receive an agricultural designation in exchange for a reduced tax rate. The property remains used only for agricultural purposes, which could be timber harvesting, active farming, and also allows the sale of produce or products from that property on site. This property is on Otis Street, and it has been in chapter for many years, for generations actually. And one of the requirements of Chapter 61 is that when the property is brought out of chapter, back taxes must be paid, and the town must receive the right of first refusal based on a bona fide appraisal and a bona fide offer. So for example, if the owner of the property received an offer from a prospective buyer of $1 million, the town would then have the right to investigate whether or not that was fair market value, and they have the right to match that. They have the right of first refusal. So this property has come out of chapter, and we're at the point now where the town must consider whether or not they wish to investigate the value of the property and exercise their right of first refusal. The property is surrounded by commercial land. It's zoned industrial B. The neighbor is Amazon. Amazon is prospective suitor for this property. Their intention is to increase their holdings on Otis Street to expand their campus in the future. I'm only going to state the facts. That's the facts. I leave it now for your discussion.
Can someone bring up, is it the house that's next door to Amazon? I mean, there was Red's.
No, it's not. It's the large 35-acre parcel.
But does it go around that house then?
Yes.
Okay, because that house was on for sale also.
Yeah, that's not part of this chapter 61 question.
I didn't think so. So was it Red's, I guess it was called?
Yes.
Kristen,
Yeah.
you have the ability to pull up the town GIS map for this parcel, so it might make more sense. If
Yeah.
not, I can do it.
Yep, I can try to get there. 1 second.
Thank you, Kristen. Yeah, again, my apologies. I don't have internet access right now, but I would do that. So this property at one time was being discussed by another potential developer who fell away from the property, but now they have a very serious offer. Excuse me. So it's gotten to the point where the town has the right to exercise their right of first refusal. The farmhouse that you were mentioning earlier is actually in a different ownership. It's owned by another member of the family.
Oh, it's
And
another family. Oh.
Yeah, yes, it's actually owned by 2 siblings. So the house is not part of this. The house and the barn are not part of this property.
Okay, but what
So I
about
don't know
the
if that's
White
the
House?
property.
Yeah.
Yeah, the White House that recently sold, I believe, was purchased by Atlantic Management as well.
Right, that was a construction. I mean, somebody was using it as a construction office.
Right.
That's right.
But, yeah, the ranch house.
Right, the ranch
that
house
is
is different.
across from the Stop and Shop. That is not
That's
part
out
of
of
this
there.
parcel.
Right.
Yeah, I
Okay.
believe.
That's correct.
So the question before the board is, do we have a recommendation whether to pursue the town's right of first refusal? It's my understanding that it's a pretty expensive parcel. It's not zoned residential. And it is also, to my understanding, some environmental issues on that lot that might make it unattractive for the town to acquire. I think it'd be better for a private developer to clean that up. So my feeling is that we would rather have commercial industrial development on that lot to, increase tax revenue.
I agree with you, Mark.
Do we know how
Agree
much?
with you, Mark, also. Sorry, sorry, Peter.
Do we know how much they're offering for that piece of land?
Jim, I'll let you address that. I believe it's public knowledge, so it's part of the notice of intent.
I don't have the price. I could get that if you want. I can get that from the assessor.
I think
So
that's pretty.
Peter, my understanding is it's $6 million.
Okay.
So the town would be able to acquire that for $6 million, but we would, not, we would have to clean up any environmental issues on the lot at that
Well,
point.
the other thing is the town couldn't recoup the taxes. I mean, once it goes out of 61A, if a potential buyer has to pay all the back taxes, and if the town bought it, then they're not going to get the benefit of that.
Kristen, can I just tell you that the lot you have highlighted, I think, is the Amazon site.
Right.
So you I believe it's number 64
This is
there.
the Amazon. This is the house.
64 is just
This
north
is
of it.
the house Hazel had brought up. This is where the brother lives right now, and then this 64 is the one that we're
Yeah,
talking.
if you click on that, that'll outline it. That might make it a little easier for people to, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so any other questions on either the parcel or the town's rights?
Mark, I think one point is to your, clearly we're all strongly in support of open space. I think $6 million could be spent in a lot of other areas in town to have a really big impact. And this is an area that we've kind of identified as wanting to have development. And that mitigation risk for environmental, who knows what that could be. So I'm not thinking this is the ideal use for the town's money.
Well, to that end, Jim, the open space fund is down to virtually nothing. So to buy this, the town would most likely have to raise and appropriate. So find it hard to justify raising people's taxes to buy a piece of property that, if developed, would most likely lower people's taxes. So I wouldn't recommend pursuing a $6 million purchase for this lot.
I agree.
It seems like a lot of money to me.
Seems like a lot of money, especially with the environmental issues that could possibly be there.
All right, any other questions or comments on this? I will make a motion that the planning board recommend that the Board of Selectmen not exercise the right of first refusal by the town of Westborough for the lot at 64 Otis.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion of the motion? Jim, does that motion sound adequate?
Yes, it does. And if you vote affirmatively on that, I will draft a memo to the town manager noting the action of this board.
Okay. So we'll do a roll call then, vote again. All those in favor, Hazel Nurse?
Yes.
Okay, Tim Kaler?
Yes.
Peter Bouchard?
Yes.
Jim Ball?
Yes, Mark.
And I vote yes as well. That's 5-0. Let's go to the next agenda item. Thank you, Kristen, for bringing that up. Next agenda item is a vote to accept the appointment of Alan Edinburgh as Select Board Rep on the Master Plan Advisory Committee. As you know, Lee Emery had to resign from the Board of Selectmen, and therefore we were left without selectmen representation on the Master Plan Advisory Committee. And the Board of Selectmen have voted to have Alan be that representative from this point forward. And the planning board just needs to officially appoint him to the advisory committee. So any questions on that from the board? Okay, I'll make a motion to appoint Alan Edinburgh to the Master Plan Advisory Committee.
I'll second that.
Peter seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor, we'll do another roll call vote. Peter, how do you vote?
I agree. Yes.
Okay, Tim Kaler?
Yes.
Jim Ball?
Yes.
Okay, Hazel Nurse?
Good choice. Yes.
And I vote yes as well. That's 5-0 in favor. Next item on the agenda is appoint a planning board representative to the zoning review subcommittee and as CMRPC delegate. So Tim Paris was our representative on the zoning review subcommittee, and he was also our CMRPC delegate. We, as a board, need to replace him on both of those committees. I don't know if anyone is interested. I had asked Jim Ball to consider the zoning subcommittee and Peter Bouchard to consider the CMRPC delegate. But if anyone else on the board has any discussion on that, please let me know.
I think it's
All
a
right,
good
so-
choice.
Yeah, I agree. I think Peter will benefit. Not only will CMRPC benefit because he has pretty good regional knowledge from his job, but he also has a pretty good head on his shoulders, and I think he'll do well. And I think he'll benefit because Jim Robbins attends those meetings and can help him get acclimated, and it'll give them a chance to give him some support and training as he gets further along in the board. And then Jim Ball, I think, makes a logical representative on the zoning subcommittee because he's on the land use committee for the master plan, and he's just a really smart guy. So that's my feeling on those, and I will make a motion to appoint Peter Bouchard as the planning board CMRPC delegate.
I'll second that, Mark.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor? Do a roll call. Hazel,
Yes, to approve.
Tim Kaler,
Yes to approve.
Peter, you get to vote.
Yes, to approve.
Jim Ball,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well. That's 5-0. And I will make a motion to appoint Jim Ball as the planning board representative on to the zoning review subcommittee.
Second.
Hazel seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll do another roll call vote. Jim Ball,
Yes, Mark.
okay, Peter,
Yes.
Tim,
Yes.
Hazel.
Yes, to approve.
Okay, and I vote yes to approve as well. Great. Thank you guys for stepping up for that. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Not to interrupt, but thank you. I'm looking forward to the opportunity of getting to know Jim more, and I think this is a great opportunity for me. So thank you.
Great. Next item on the agenda is a master plan update. Jim Robbins, I'll turn it over to you to give us an update on the master plan.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So as you all know, we had a meeting of the Master Plan Advisory Committee, the full committee, and it was a public forum. And we had 54 members of the public attend. At one time, we had 82 people in our virtual meeting. That would include all the members of the advisory committee as well as the public. We had 4 breakout groups where the facilitators had specific topics they were talking about, and they rotated between the 4 different breakout groups. We received very good substantive comment from the public and received several written comments the next day from a couple members of the community that participated that evening. And there you can view them on the master plan website. That was our second and currently planned final public hearing. The next step will be to finalize our goals and objectives. And we have our next Master Plan Advisory Committee meeting on the 18th. That's a Thursday the 18th, 6:30. And at that meeting, we will finalize our goals and action statements and move to the third phase of the master plan, which is where we begin actually writing the implementation steps and working on the implementation matrix. So, for example, if I can just choose Jim Ball's group, he has the land use and regulatory subcommittee. So Jim's group has proposed several changes to the zoning bylaws in a general fashion that would bring about the types of development that we'd like to see in the downtown, as well as in our commercial and industrial districts. So Jim and his group would begin putting together the actual regulations that would be proposed to the town, whether it's through zoning or through town policies, maybe through the EDC. And that would be the next phase. It's hoped that we can tie up this phase at the end of April for a draft of the master plan in May. And the consultants, VHB, will be talking to us about that in brief at our next meeting on the 18th. They will only be there for a short period of time to explain the next steps. And then the advisory committee will break out into groups to actually talk about finalizing their goals and action statements and what they will do for the final implementation stage. So that's where the master plan stands currently. Do you have any questions?
Jim, Mark, if I may.
Go ahead, Jim.
Jim, just to be clear, so in the next meeting, are we going to go into detail as to what we need to do as committees? Is that the intent of that next meeting?
Yes, so the consultants, VHP, will be there to explain what the next phase of responsibilities are for the committee. And they'll present to you what they call an implementation matrix, which shows all of the goals and action statements that you have already put together and ranks them from short term to mid-term to long range. And short term is generally 1 to 2 years, mid-range is generally 2 to 5 years, and long range is more than 5 years. And you would prioritize your goals and your action statements within the matrix. Each group will do that so that we have one large implementation matrix.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. Jim, could you just repeat the date on that meeting?
Sure, it's March 18th. That's a Thursday, and it'll be at 6:30. It'll be virtual, obviously. You'll be receiving an invite.
Is it 6:30? Because the last one I thought we called it 6, didn't we?
The public hearing was at 6. I don't have it in front of me. Hazel, again, my apologies. Kristen, do you know if it's 6:30? If you have access to your calendar?
I think we need to confirm that.
I don't think
their leadership team.
Yeah, I don't think we've made a decision on the time yet.
Okay, so we'll get an invitation for that, and it'll be published and publicized, and that'll be on Westborough TV as well. So,
yep.
Good. All right. So I'm sorry. Was there something else?
No, I was going to ask Jim. Jim, could you just give a short, 2-sentence thing on the Zoom meeting you and I attended last week on the house?
Yeah, thank you, Hazel. I was going to break in before you adjourned to actually ask for time to talk about that. So Hazel and I attended the housing choice legislation seminar last Thursday evening. It was put on by CMRPC, and it was attended by planners from our region, particularly Kathy Jubert, the Northborough town planner. The Berlin town planner was there. The Oxford town planner was there. These are ones that commented during the information question and answer session. I asked a question about how this would affect our transfer development rights requirements under our transit-oriented village. So as a brief synopsis, the housing choice legislation is new legislation that came down from the state and signed by the governor that requires municipalities that have train stations and those municipalities which abut municipalities that have train stations, which is why Northborough was there and Berlin was there, and Northborough was surprised that they were considered an MBTA community. So it touches quite a few communities. So it requires those host communities to provide by right within a half a mile of the train station opportunities for multifamily housing at a density of 15 units per acre. So without special permit, by right, providing an area where multifamily housing can be built. As you know, currently we allow up to 14 units per acre, so increasing that to 15 would require an amendment to our zoning. We also require a special permit as opposed to being allowed by right. but I don't think that that's a heavy lift either, because our regulations within the zoning are pretty specific about what is required of an applicant when they propose multifamily housing. The concern for us is we have a transfer of development rights component to our zoning, where we allow 4 units by right and up to an additional 10 units, making the 14 per acre, with a transfer of property from our residential district that is currently open to the transit-oriented village district. So if you had, say, a proposal for a subdivision in the residential neighborhood, you could transfer that density to the transit-oriented village, and the property in the residential district would remain open and be transferred to the town and be ours in perpetuity. That's how we received Veterans Freedom Park. Veterans Freedom Park's a 23-acre parcel with frontage on the Sowasco Reservoir. And I know everyone's familiar with that property. It's a beautiful piece of land. That was bought by the developer of Westborough Village, the original developer. At his expense, he purchased the property and transferred it free to the town. And in exchange, the town granted him 10 units per acre density bonus, or 14 units per acre, of which he only chose to use 10 units per acre at the site of Westborough Village. So that's how that worked. And my question was, what happens to that for us? Because we only had an underlying zone of 4 units per acre. If we're going to have to go up to 15, what incentive is there for a developer to do a transfer of development rights? And obviously the answer would be very little. So maybe we could keep that transfer of development rights and allow additional density above the 15, or another component of this housing choice is you're allowed to designate another part of town to be the area where you allow 15 units by right. So we wouldn't have to affect our TOV as it stands now, keep the transfer of development rights, keep the special permit, and not allow it by right, but transfer it to a different district. We'd have to make it very specific. We'd have to show it on the zoning map, and we'd have to develop rules consistent with the housing choice. My take on this is that most of the land in the current TOV is used, and we've created over 300 units of housing using the TOV zoning and receiving transfer development rights. In addition, Westborough Station, which is also known as Charlestown Meadows or Avalon West, is also within that TOV district. And that's another 120 units of housing that we've gotten credit for at the state. We have 13.4% affordable housing now. I don't think that changing our TOV would hurt us at all, because the likelihood of additional units being built there is slim. There is one parcel that's about 8 acres that's vacant in the district, which obviously could yield quite a few units at 15 per acre. But that's probably the only development that would be possible. The other thing that hamstrings us right now is we don't have wastewater capacity additional in our sewer treatment plant. So even if there was a proposal at the TOV, we couldn't accommodate it. We wouldn't be able to approve it, even by right, until we increase the capacity in our wastewater treatment plant. So that's a lot of information to absorb. I have the summary that was presented at the question and answer session, which was quite good. I have the entire PowerPoint presentation, and I also have a 1.5-page fact sheet, which I think is a really good way to get your arms around the legislation. I'll send those to the board.
Yeah, so that scratches the surface on that. I attended a couple of webinars too, and there's quite a few other things we have to be aware of. That the mandate of vote is changing. So instead of 2/3 majority, we would only need 50% plus one.
Yeah.
Simple majority, yes.
Right.
Simple majority, yeah. So that could affect town meeting. That could affect our votes as a special permit, or as a the special permit granting authority on certain votes, certain types of votes. It's pretty complicated, and I recommend going through that summary that Jim is talking about, because it does discuss some of those changes as well.
Yeah, I think one of the problems at the moment is that they really, the law is there, it's broad, but all the implementation of the law has not been worked out yet. So that's going to take a while, and it's going to take a lot of thought and effort before we really know what the specifics are of how the law is going to affect, or how the law is going to be affected by regulations, how it's going to be implemented by regulations. So I think this is going to take some time. This is not something that's going to happen soon.
Yeah, I agree with that, but we should get ahead of it. We should
Oh,
start
yeah.
thinking about it now. Yeah, and the fact is, over almost 200 communities in the state are affected by this legislation. Just the MBTA communities. So
Right.
every community is affected by the mandate of vote changes. So, there's, for example, accessory dwelling units have been defined. I mean, there's a lot to this legislation, and we need to wrap our heads around it and figure out what we're going to do about it as a board. Because we may have to get something on the fall town warrant. We may have to get something. I think certainly we'll have to consider something for next spring at the latest. And again, I think that's going to be primarily the responsibility of the zoning review subcommittee to come up with some proposals that we as a board can consider. But we may all want to get involved with that, and certainly we will all be involved with that when it comes to the board for to craft that legislation. Questions on that? Again, it's pretty complicated. If you get a chance to take a webinar, I think Jim can probably. I think there's probably going to be some more webinars coming up that you may want to.
There will be. I will send them out to the entire board. They're free. They generally last an hour to an hour and a half.
Time is money, Jim. Time is money.
Yes. They are in the evening.
All right. So, Jim, thanks for that summary. We have a letter from, unless there's other questions on that, I'd like to move on to the 228 Ruggles. Okay. We have a letter from the project manager, Karen Keegan, requesting another continuance due to illness to the meeting on April 6th, is it? Karen, Kristen, I can't read it. April 6th?
9th?
Actually, the meeting is April 6th, and then she left it so that the decision would need to be completed by April 9th.
Okay, so I will make a motion to continue the 228 Ruggles through April 9th.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor, we'll do a roll call again. Hazel?
Yes, to approve.
Tim Kaler?
Yes.
Peter Bouchard?
Yes, to approve.
Jim Ball?
Yes, Mark.
Okay, and I vote yes as well. That's 5-0 to approve that continuance. I think we have some minutes. So Jim Ball, do you want to take those?
Sure, Mark. I believe everyone received the drafts of the minutes from February 2nd and 16th. Also turns out we needed to file the minutes for the executive session we held with the select board on January 19th, which I believe you all had a copy of. So those are the minutes that are pending. And I would ask for a motion to approve those.
I'll make a motion to.
Go ahead.
Ma'am?
Hazel?
I just had a question on one of the minutes.
Go ahead, Hazel.
Put your motion on if you want.
No, go ahead.
Okay, on the minutes for the February 16, on the last page, for clarification, it says the town meeting rescheduled to Saturday, May 15th, 2021. Warrant is not closed. It says only one article proposed. Are we talking about one planning board article? I mean, I would just like a clarification on the one article. You see what I'm saying?
So I believe the planning board only has one article, right?
Okay, well, it's just a clarify, because if you read this, it looks like the warrant has one article, and I just would like a clarification when you
If
go.
only
look
that
at
were
this.
true, Hazel, if only
I
that
know.
were true.
That'd be my favorite town meeting ever.
Be my favorite town meeting.
Yeah, if we could just put in something about
By
planning
planning
board
board?
sponsored article.
So that's just a clarification. It doesn't change the meaning of the minutes, so they can be voted on.
Tell me where that is again. I have it pulled up in front of me.
It's page 4
Okay.
under new.
Under
old
new and
business,
old business, Kristen.
Okay.
and it's the last sentence. Town meeting rescheduled.
That was only one article. So we need to change it to only one planning board article?
That's all I asked.
Okay.
So I
Thanks.
would, yeah, so a motion to approve with the amendment of that addition by Hazel.
Second,
Jim, are we approving all of them with this motion?
I would, is that, if I would ask to approve them as a bundle, if everyone's okay with that.
Okay, I just wasn't clear.
Yes. Do you want me to do a roll call or would you do that, Mark?
Yeah, you're in charge here,
Okay.
so.
Sure. All right. Mark, I'll ask you first.
I vote yes.
All right. Tim Kaler,
Yes to approve.
Hazel.
yes to approve.
Should Peter vote even though, because he wasn't at these meetings?
I believe he can still
can
vote
vote.
to approve the minute.
Okay, Peter?
I don't know. Okay, I don't know if I sent Peter copies of these minutes to read.
Yeah, I was actually I was forwarded the minutes.
Okay, I just couldn't remember if I gave it to you or
Yeah.
not.
I think if someone is not a member of the board, I don't know how they can vote on minutes for meetings.
They didn't attend.
Exactly.
I don't need-
When they were appointed.
Yeah, why don't we just leave it at that? and
Yeah.
Peter abstains.
Okay.
That's good.
All right. So those are with one abstaining.
So Peter, just to clarify for you, traditionally the vice chair handles the minutes and signs the minutes. Just how we've always done it. If Jim were absent, I would do it as chairman, but that's why we turn it over to the vice chair for this. Okay. Just
Thank you.
in case you're confused.
No, I appreciate the clarification. I'm learning.
Oh, yes. Well, it'll take a while, but you'll get it. So, all right. Any other business? Jim Robbins, am I missing something? I think that's everything.
I do not have the agenda in front of me, but it seems that you have everything because you even included the master plan and we talked about housing choice legislation. So you have everything.
Okay. Anyone else with other business? All right. Hearing none, I will make a motion to adjourn.
Second,
Okay, all those in favor,
Yes.
Yeah.
speak up. I don't think we need a roll call for this one.
All right.
I vote yes as well. That's 5-0. Thank you, guys. Have a great night.
Well, and welcome, Peter. I didn't get to say at the beginning.
Thank you all. I honestly, it's a
Welcome.
great honor. It's a great honor to work with you guys. I appreciate it.
welcome. We look forward to it.
Great.
Thank you, Hazel.
All right, have a good weekend, everyone.
Take care, everyone.
Bye.
Good night.
Okay, bye.